If you love manifestation, if you love QVC, if you love personal development, this is the episode for you because I'm speaking with my client, Jen Coffey, the host of the Phoenix podcast. Jen came to me to start a podcast after she left her years of QVC, the television selling network, and she wanted to create a platform that she could really just connect with people on and share about what she was personally interested in, which is all about manifestation. I have learned so much from Jen's podcast, and now I can't wait for you to learn from her as well. In this episode, she's also sharing some great tips of how to present yourself speaking, because that's what she's done for the past years. Like, she has been on people's TVs connecting with them. So the way she presents herself, I think, is really impressive, and there's a lot for us to learn. So let's get into this episode with my client, Jen Coffey. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe, where we're serving up everything you need to know about podcasting, from tips, stories, and strategies for podcasters from podcasters. I'm your host, Haley Hayhurst, the founder of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast agency helping business owners, creatives, and thought leaders launch and grow their shows. Whether you're just starting out or want to take your podcast to the next level, this is the place for you. Each week, we'll dive into practical tips, actionable strategies, and of course, stories from other podcasters so that you can build up a podcast that you love and that works for your business. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get started. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe. Hey Jennifer, welcome into the Podcast Cafe. I am so excited to have you here today.
Hey, I've been so eager for this invite. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward all week to chatting with you. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, of course, of course. So we connected on Instagram. You reached out to me. You're like, hey, I want to start a podcast. And then we just went for it. And you already had the concept, all of that. So we'll get all into that. But the first thing I need to ask you, since we are in the Podcast Cafe, is what is your go-to coffee order?
Oh, I am the most boring coffee order ever. In fact, there was a time where I was presenting on QVC this coffee maker, and they wanted to make for me live like my favorite coffee drink. And I was like, I drink Americanos with one stevia. And they were like, wow, that's really boring. I'm like, yeah.
That's so funny. They're like, come up with something fun.
Can you maybe come back and with like lavender or something? Yeah, it's because for me, coffee is about like, I'm results driven when it comes to coffee. Wake me up so I can get on the way. Yeah, so
I agree.
I hope I'm not the only person who gave you that most boring. I was totally unprepared. I could have come up with something very fancy.
No, you know what's so funny? When I started this podcast, I was like, this is going to be the first question I ask everyone. And I'm going to get so many cool coffee ideas. And almost everyone that comes on here says the same thing. I'm so bored. And I'm like, no, coffee's
honestly,
coffee.
Haley, if anybody should have a creative answer, it's someone whose last name is Coffee. So I really have failed you. So I'll see if I can work on that. And it gets even more distressing when I'm in Europe. My husband's from Europe, so we will go there frequently. And he's like, okay, listen to me. They don't have just boring coffee. Like, you're going to get an espresso or you're going to, and I'm like, no, I'm just ordering an Americano and just, they can figure
They can figure it out.
And they're like, so great, funny. Watered down espresso. Love it. Thanks.
Right. What's his order? Is it espresso?
Yeah, it's an espresso. And I mean like the kind that like goes down your throat like that, you know, the blacker the better. And I'm just like, oh, yeah.
I know. There's some espresso I've had where I'm like, wow, I'm so energized all of a sudden, like not in a good way.
But what is yours? I realize I'm not the one doing the interviewing, but like, what do you have a fancy?
Yeah, I love a iced hazelnut latte. That's like my go-to.
Sounds so yummy.
When I'm out. When I'm home, I just make boring coffee. But that's always my little treat.
Okay, that's my autumn. That's on my autumn to-do list. Is come up with a creative coffee order that's like bespoke to me.
Yeah, there's good flavors in the autumn too, so you can get really creative with that.
Okay, I'm on it.
Well, we're here to talk all about your podcast, right? So why don't you tell us about the Phoenix podcast and kind of why you started it?
For sure. Well, Haley, you had mentioned that I found you on Instagram. And while that may have been where I reached out to you, I actually found you on Threads. Like, I think this is a platform that I mean, millions of people are on it, but like, I still think people are sleeping on it. And I found myself thinking like, why is this so hard to find? Like somebody who, I can just meet with and kind of convey the vibe that I'm looking for. And she can help me brainstorm, tell me how to do this because I don't have a clue. And I found your threads to be just very approachable and understandable. And your energy was great. Your vibe was great. And I thought, this is the gal that I want to reach out to. So, and it was, as you know, just the tiniest little, beginning of an idea. I wanted a platform where I could talk to people at length and in detail about something that I'd only done in fits and starts on social media via Instagram, Facebook, and on a microscopic level on television. Because, as you know, but others may not know, the bulk of my career has been in television on the home shopping channel, QVC. And so obviously I'm not talking about things like manifesting your dreams and the law of attraction at length, but any opportunity that I have to inspire people and remind them that a dream is in your heart for a reason and it is far closer to being realized than you could possibly imagine. I'd slip that in any chance I could. And people responded really well to that. I mean, how could you not, right? And when I realized that there was this growing community of people who were craving more on an understandable and modern level, as opposed to some of the kind of archaic language around law of attraction, I thought the best way to do this is either to be just, I don't know, filming videos and posting them on YouTube, which I could do, but a podcast just seemed a little bit warmer and relaxed. And I was excited about that, but had no clue what to do, what kind of microphone to buy. Do I do it on my phone? Like, any of that. And so you were tremendous help. So don't sleep on Threads. It's a great networking platform.
I love that. I actually didn't know that's where you first found me, and that makes me really happy. I make so many cool connections on Threads. I feel like that's where people are just like dying for community, and Threads is the answer to that I found. Like,
I'm impressed that it's made it this long before it just got invaded by spam and there's some advertising on there. I'm starting to see the ads popping up, and I'm like, okay, this is our happy place. Let's keep it like that.
Yeah. Well, I am happy that you started your podcast, and a lot of people were too. I mean, when you started, it had a great adoption rate. Like, your listeners were coming and interacting with you, and something that you rolled out when you rolled out the podcast was some things changed, but it was your coaching, right? Like, you started taking on one-on-one clients. What was that experience like, offering, because I mean, you've been on TV for so long, so what was it like having like these face-to-face conversations with clients?
I think if you talk to many people who are in television, I can't speak to movies or radio as much, but it seems like it's such an interactive job, right? And unless you're doing, I guess, some of the more hard-hitting journalism or a talk show, it actually is the opposite. I'm interacting with people in front of the camera on a limited basis, but the bulk of my interaction with the audience is just via social media, or if somebody, recognizes me and we strike up a conversation. So I was really, really craving that discourse, that connection. And I mean, once again, I'm hosting a podcast and it's just me and the camera. So I'm still not achieving that or satisfying that craving that way. I get feedback and that's wonderful. But I had so many people reaching out to me, and, they would have questions or they'd ask if they could meet me for coffee. And I thought, you know what, here's an opportunity for me to really sit, and instead of just spewing out, this is how law of attraction works, read this book. Just like any other skill, like you can listen to a finance podcast, but you're sitting there going, okay, but here's how much money I have. Here's my debt. Here's my passion that I want to invest in. And unless you have a consultant that you can work with, you hit a brick wall by just reading books and listening to podcasts. So it was in talking to you and kind of brainstorming, okay, what's the next step if I'm going to promote something or be sponsored or kind of offer up to people a next level, what should that be? And the more I was reading and listening to other people and their podcast experience, I realized one of the best ways is to skip over the middleman of an advertiser and just offer up you and either in consulting or the writings that you do, and not just to make money but to get that immediate feedback of, is this stuff that people are really responding to? And the response to that had been overwhelming. Before we started recording, we were talking about, I'm actually in like a interim period, kind of wrapped up my first season, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I'm still getting people reaching out to me for coaching sessions. And I didn't know what to expect for that. Like, okay, now I am interacting with people. Do I like that? Or, like, am I able to modify my knowledge for 30 different individuals? And it's worked out really well. And Haley, like, the stories that I'm getting from people, new jobs being found and new partnership, romantic relationships being formed, money being made. It inspires me to keep on going. Like, I'm sure your experience has been that people will wrap up a season and then they never go back, right? But talking to these people and realizing that everything that I'm saying when put into practice is starting to show real benefits for them, it makes me more eager than ever to come back to the mic.
I love that. I love that the people that you're helping are starting to have these huge transformations.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, exactly like you said. Someone can listen to your podcast and read books, and you always share quotes. So they can get more into those things. But really the action part of manifestation is something you've had an episode about. It's something that a lot of people miss.
Yep.
And I think taking that action of working with you, and I'm sure they're really excited because, tell me if I'm wrong, but they've probably been seeing you on TV for years and they're like, oh my gosh, like, you're real, here we are together.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a letdown or not, right? But it's, and I mean, I've had that, trust me, many times, my own experience of like, wow, here's this person that, I've seen on camera, and are they the same? Are they, heaven forbid, they're unpleasant, or, are they really great? And I can confidently say that 99% of the time, you come to really realize that everybody's just a person. And I mean that in the, the simplest, way, but also the most beautiful way. And it's gotten to the point now where, I don't get starstruck in the sense of I feel small around somebody who, and certainly I don't have like the level of fame of anybody that I've worked with. But I can tell you that the one time I thought I was going to just faint was when I worked with Coldplay. Like that.
Oh my gosh.
that was it. Like I literally had that moment. Have you ever gone to a concert or something and you're like, I'm in the same room with Taylor Swift, like whatever. Yeah. And you just can't even believe it, right?
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there going, I'm in the same room with Chris Martin and Coldplay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure nobody has that reaction around me, but it's really great to, kind of go, yes, that's one side of my personality. But the 98% that people haven't seen through my 14-year journey on television was this part of me who is so passionate about utilizing co-creation to make literal miracles happen in your life. And take the distance that most people think. I mean, most people think the distance between their dream and the reality is infinite. Yeah. And when I tell you that it's this short, and your mindset is the differential, when people finally come to me and they have a coaching session, I already know that they're there because they're past that weird, it's not weird, but the I can't, they can't believe in it. And when they come to meet me and go through those coaching sessions, I'm like, you're already there because it's possible. And to see them take that leap and make dreams come true is just, I'm babbling because I could talk about this all day. It's just an amazing thing to witness.
I love that so much. And thinking about the way that you structure your podcast episodes, I think is really important for the listeners to know, because you always start with, a quote to kind of set the scene. And then the way you talk about manifestation or whatever topic it is that you're talking about in that episode is very approachable, right? Like, you're not using these words that are so, like, obviously the people that are listening know a little bit about manifestation, they're interested, or whatever it is, law of attraction, but you're not speaking of these concepts that are so, advanced that
Yeah.
people can't get into it.
It's an interesting topic to approach in conversation because it can go in so many different directions and it's all applicable and relevant. So by that I mean you can talk about manifesting a goal and use strictly religious or biblical spiritual language and never stray from that and still make the same points that a person who uses strictly quantum physics
Yeah.
will. So we only use, let's say we only use scientific language in quantum physics and energy on the smallest level, and we can still reach the same conclusions. And I think that where a lot of people, they struggle with that because it's like, well, which is it? And I love going, it's all of it. And I can use the language of whatever makes you most comfortable, gets you most excited, shortens your suspension of disbelief. I can use that and still get you there.
Yeah.
And it's not manipulation. It's because in every ideology or religion or scientific approach, there is the language of law of attraction. And so people will find, I think, when they're ready, they'll find the approach that works best for them. Some people discover it in a Bible study class. Some people discover it, as I did, when somebody said, hey, you should watch The Secret, and I was like, okay, I don't know what that is, but I'll watch anything that a friend recommends. And I found that to be like the language that really resonated with me because it was very simple. And so in today's day and age where we are so inundated with toxic positivity, right? Like the quotes that are just, it feels almost like junk food,
Yeah.
here, eat this quote, it'll make you feel better, right? And it's a start, but the key is it should only be the start. I was inspired to start the podcast with a quote by one of my absolute favorite authors and thinkers in this field, Dr. Wayne Dyer. And most of his chapters in his books would start with a quote just to kind of get you in the right headspace, get you in the right mindset. But he never left you there. He would use that as an entryway to get into some of the deeper points that he wanted to. And so I do something similar to get into some really, intense conversations, but hopefully never in a conversation that repels you because it's hard to understand. And I've, read some of the books that are really hard to understand, and I'm going, nope, no wonder people are scared by this, right? I'm having a hard time, and I eat this stuff up. But if somebody wants it children understand it. Children understand law of attraction.
Yeah.
And we need to get back to some of that they can play pretend until things happen in their lives. And in a nutshell, that's a lot of what manifesting is, playing pretend.
Yeah. Yeah. And all of your episodes this last season, with the exception of the one with your husband, which I loved. It was so good.
Oh, the viewership on that one. I'm like, well, honey, guess what?
I know, it's famous, right? But they were all solo episodes, which a lot of people do struggle with. And I want to hear what advice you have for anyone who wants to host a really confident solo episode. I know that you talk about your life in it and maybe how you decide which stories to share, how much to share. So I think that all goes into having a relatable, confident solo episode.
This might not be the best way to respond right away, but I actually would pitch back a question to you because I don't know the answer. Do you think that for some people, a solo podcast might be easier if there were no video? Like it's just audio?
I do think so. Yeah. I know when I start working with clients and they're like, I tell them that they really should do some solo episodes. I do say you don't need video for it. Like video is just a plus if you're getting nervous staring at yourself.
Staring at your face. Yeah.
Right.
Well, it helps that you're not even really staring at your face. You're staring at the, wherever the camera is. But it just occurred to me because I know for sure, I bet I would find it, I don't know if easier, but maybe a little bit more comfortable if I didn't have to like put a face on before I go.
Yeah. Right.
I'm like, oh, I got to do this, I do have the advantage of being like, you didn't see me when I was in, video boot camp for QVC and going through all the rehearsals to get past that weird feeling of talking to no one. But it's when you realize that you're talking to a lot of people that can either help you or make it even worse, right? Some people don't like to know that when you're on QVC, there's the potential of tens of millions of people watching. And, for me, I guess because I can't see them, it doesn't bother me as much. And whenever I see that, in my case here, it's a green light, but the red light in the studio, the practice that a lot of hosts do is to imagine that it's one of your favorite people. And so if you are talking to that red light and in your head, you're talking to your daughter, you're talking to your spouse, you're talking to your best friend, then your language starts to shift a little bit. And before you know it, it seems odd to you that there isn't a person behind that camera.
Yeah.
It's also really helpful if you take out of your mind the possibility of it being edited. I find that most people perform way better. I mean, I have seen people, Haley, in rehearsals, because I do also coach people who are going in front of the camera. They struggle a lot when they know that they can start over. And so you'll start to fumble a sentence and go, okay, wait, we got to start over. We got to start over. And, they give you that liberty when you're recording a TV commercial or a movie, but in live television, there is no do. If you say that, everybody's just staring at you saying, we got to start over. That's why you never see them doing that in news. Now, what you probably don't realize is that you actually hear people in news fumble their words a lot. Your brain just deletes it, unless it's a disaster of an error. When somebody misspeaks or says, you don't really register it. And so if you go into your recording with the mindset of, I don't get to edit this, I'm just going, then you'll find you become a lot more conversational. When you have a conversation with your best friend, you don't say, I have to stop and start over, right? Yeah. She's just sitting there. And you keep going even when you're rambling or you're tired or you say a lot. So I found myself a little bit challenged, Haley, and you don't know this. When I first recorded my first podcast for you, I did stop and start over a bunch of times. And it was because I knew I could. And it wasn't until I went, I'm just going to have to pretend that this is QVC, because I was getting annoyed. And when I pretended that it was QVC and I couldn't stop, I don't think we had many edits in that first podcast, but it took me kind of having that, that's what I'm missing. Right. So I would say do it. If you hate it, what's the worst that can happen? You don't do it again. But, and I know that it's engaging to hear two different voices, but I always wonder when there are, and I don't mean to be disparaging when I say this because there's a lot of fascinating podcasts out there, but sometimes I'm listening to a podcast that's hosted by a person I really like and respect. And I'm annoyed that there's somebody else there, right? I'm like, no, you're a really funny person. I want to hear your jokes about the news that happened this weekend, right? Yes. And so they're taking advantage of, not taking advantage in a bad way, but they're like, hey, I'm going to get the audience because I am this big personality. But they have all these other big personalities. And I'm like, I just want to hear Tina Fey talking. I just want to hear XYZ talking. So don't discount the value of your own voice. I'm pretty sure that's why they're tuning in to begin with.
100%.
Right? Yeah.
That's always what I tell people. I'm like, people are coming to the podcast for you, right? The guest is just a bonus. If they didn't like you, they would go listen to another
wherever else that's
right. But exactly. And I also feel like when you don't do solo episodes, you're really kind of not being in your most powerful self, right? Because since they are coming to you to be the expert, it's almost like you're handing off the torch that the other person's an expert, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm going to let this person, I'll interview them, but I'm going to let them share their thoughts. And unless you're doing solo episodes, and I'm not saying every episode has to be solo episodes, but really when you do those solo episodes, you are the expert in that people are coming to listen to.
Yeah. I think, ideally it would be a mix of both. So for example, in like a manifestation or a law of attraction, it would be really great to have some of guests who are very faith driven. And then the next week, someone who's very science driven. Yeah. And the next week, somebody who is a testimonial to it having worked in their life. But in the end, I know that I also feel like that would put me in a panic having to always find guests, there's enough to deal with, unless you have a manager and, and good for you. But isn't it nice
Totally.
sometimes just to share with somebody outside of, I mean, social media is so, the attention span is so short. So if I have something that like, wait, this is a really good point I want to explain, I'm back where I was in television with just having the little opportunities to share little nuggets, and I might as well just post that on Instagram.
Hmm.
But when I want to dive deep and I want to, hey, what if you don't know? Like we did an episode about like, what if I don't even know what I want to begin with, right?
Yeah.
Like you're talking a lot about dreams. I don't even know what my dream is. You can't talk about that in 3 minutes. I
No.
can serve you some cute quotes or whatever, but I'm like, that's hard. And it is a universally understood struggle. So many people out there don't know what they want. They just want things to be better. And that's valid. But to get you out of that, it's going to take more than a 30-second soundbite on
Right.
Reels. So
Totally. And that's
now you
really
have
where
to.
podcasting is powerful. When you were, I know that you planned out the topics in advance, but did you create scripts or bullet points, or what was your plan going into the episodes?
Yeah, it's usually bullet points. I'll do, because I can't memorize quotes, I'll write the quote down and I have
Yeah.
it on a little, like if you watch me and watch me closely, you'll see me looking off to the side occasionally. I don't have them today because I don't know what you're going to ask. But but I'll, just to kind of give myself something to come back to.
Totally.
Or a lot of times I'll do, I'm a list addict. And so I love a good, top 10 ways that you can manifest, $1,000, and I'll have to have that list over there. But I don't have the extensive conversation because then you might as well just have a teleprompter, and
Hmm.
nobody really wants to watch that. So it's bullet points, and I'll brainstorm it a little bit. It is everybody works differently, but for me, it was a huge relief to kind of get into the habit of sending you 5 to 10 podcast topics and having you schedule them out. So that was keeping me honest and on time, but also as soon as I'd wrap one, I'd see what the next one was going to be. And that gave me the whole week to kind of muse on it. So that
Yeah.
by the time I went to record, it felt very natural.
Totally.
Yeah.
And, back to the point of like you sharing your own stories, people love what you shared, throughout your years of QVC. And you have a big following on Facebook. And it's just like there's a lot of people who know you. So, how do you decide which stories to include in the podcast and what to stay private in your own life?
Yeah, it's we we actually say within the host community at QVC that we were the original influencers, which sounds very braggish, but like when you really think about it, I mean, this is a company that started in the 80s, and it was, apart from maybe the occasional infomercial, was the first of its kind to have people who didn't invent the product telling you why they loved it and kind of offering it up to you. Do you want it or do you not? And in a nutshell, that's exactly what influencers do, right? On a vastly different scale and across many different demographics now.
Mhm.
But I mention that because in order to, and it's all live, it is unscripted. People wonder, are there teleprompters? There are no teleprompters. There's not even really any sound bites. There's just product information and your own conversation with the guest. So that being the case, if you're a host and you're on the air for anywhere from 12 to 20 hours a week, you cannot be an actress. You can't sustain a fake persona 15 to 20 hours a week for 15 years. Like you would have to, I don't know. Nobody can do that.
Yeah.
So the only person you can be is yourself. And when you are talking for so long about, I mean, there are times where I did almost an entire hour on a single product, and it could just be a chain necklace, right? So if you talk about a single chain necklace for almost an hour, you're going to tell stories about your life. You're going to talk about, so for example, when I was hired, my daughter was 11, I was a single parent. So I shared with everybody the joys of moving my daughter across the country when I manifested my dream job. And I didn't share those stories because I was hoping people would, like me and want to be like me or do the same thing. That was my life, right?
Yeah.
And so when I'm on the air at 4 a.m. and I'm exhausted, and I know that when I get home, I got to put my daughter on the bus, I'm not going to sleep, I would crack jokes about that. Like, hey, forgive me if I sound like I'm drunk. I promise I'm not. I'm just sleep deprived because, And
Yeah.
so people organically, they get to know your life. They knew that I was single. So when I brought into my life, called him, to me finally, my dream man, they had followed my journey there too. So it is a roundabout way of answering your question is, it was very organic that I would share all of this with people. And it almost feels like there's hardly anything I didn't share, including when I had a crap day, or I was doubting myself, or I was doubting that I'd ever find my perfect man, And I think it was that necessary vulnerability that made it very genuine, because I wasn't, trying to shock. There was no shock value to anything that I was sharing. It was just, here's me, hope you like me. And so when I do the podcast, it's just a natural extension of that, and actually became a real case study in sharing, because as you know, when I started the podcast, I was sitting in a yoga studio that I was planning to open in just a couple of weeks. And life gave me one great big topsy-turvy when my husband landed his dream job and we discovered we were moving across the country. And so here I am in this podcast talking about this yoga studio that, was an intention of mine and was about to come to fruition. And we had to pivot. And so it became less of a conversation about like this dream coming true. Technically it did, but also technically it didn't. So how do we factor in these tumultuous, weird things that happen to us into a conversation about making your dreams come true? And I did. A lot of people would just kind of, I guess, sweep it under the rug and be like, well, on to the next. And I'm like, well, I've already put it out there that, this is what I wanted to do. And I can't wait to see what the universe has in store for me that's even better. And that approach has worked for me through every rock bottom, hard time in my life. And because I was doing it in the podcast, I had to share that. Otherwise, it sounds like I'm being deceitful or I'm lying to people, and I'm not. And so, yeah, it's up to everybody, right? But it does feel like in this world of social media and podcasting, you should respect your own privacy and things that you don't want to share. But on the flip side, I think there's a lot to be said for just being vulnerable, because no matter what it is, if you're recovering from addiction, if you're divorcing for the first, second, third time, if you gained 100 pounds, you lost 100 pounds, like it's okay to talk about those things, because people are looking to you to feel community. And to know that they're not alone in what they're going through. And the more people who can be vulnerable, the quicker we can tear down this wall that has been built also by social media, which is that everybody's life should just be perfect all the time. And it shouldn't.
I agree. 100%. I agree with that. Since you also help people with how they show up on camera, could you leave us with some tips? I'm so excited to hear these. Like how we can show up more confidently, speak better on camera. I know I have a client who he gets really frustrated with himself because he says a lot. And, the last question, which is coming to you too, I always ask, like, what's the most surprising thing that podcasting taught you about yourself? And he told me his was, he didn't realize he said
that so he said, yeah.
I was like, let's give us a positive, surprising moment. But I respect that. Like, it is one of those things where when we hear ourselves speak, it can be kind of shocking.
For sure. Oh, I still hate to listen to my own voice. Like, I don't know if anybody ever gets past that. Or in television, when we'll do what's called tape reviews, where they go back and like, hey, let's watch your show and pick it apart. If you actually enjoy that, I think there's some kind of like,
I could crawl into a corner. Like,
yeah,
if someone plays anything of mine,
God.
I'm like,
am I allowed to drink before this? Because I gotta feel less nervous than I do right now. But yeah, so just like maybe let that put your mind at ease. I don't know. I enjoy being in front of the camera because I have this it's a small group actually, who love getting in front of the camera and not knowing the plan. Like, people may enjoy getting in front of the camera and having their photo taken, or they enjoy getting in front of the camera and reading back a script and acting. And those are all, I could never do that. I think that's very admirable. I prefer and enjoy, like you had asked me beforehand, so do you have any questions for this? And I'm like, actually, I prefer that let's just do it, because I seem to be more at ease that way. So everybody is different, right? And just like I'm speaking to the person who's listening, like just like you will look at other people and think there's no way I could do that. They're thinking the same thing about you. I promise you. If you know enough about a subject or are eager to learn enough about a subject that you're going to do a podcast about it, people want to hear what you have to say. And you have more credibility than even you think, even if you are a PhD and you are the known authority in your field. You still don't know just how much you know. And people are craving that. They're craving learning more in an approachable way, a conversational way. Getting back to what you had said about the ums and the uhs, because I know that that is a forever demon for a lot of people, and they will go to various speaking classes. And what is the one where they ring the bell every time you say and I can't think of like a better way to like just freak somebody out and have them saying for the rest of their life. Like, no, this is not how we train people.
Yeah.
When people tell me, or I notice in coaching that they're struggling with that, I will ask them to listen to me talk like I'm talking right now. So you and I are having a conversation. We're talking about podcasting. So just now, I dropped 2 what felt like lengthy pauses into that sentence. I don't think it made anybody uncomfortable. I just paused for a second. People feel the need to fill that pause with something, with sound, because silence can be terrifying. So if you're in the middle of a sentence and you're just trying to get to the next thought, go ahead and let it be silent. Because anytime you say, your brain is trying to catch up with what your mouth is doing. And your brain is like pumping on the brakes going, I'm not ready, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. And so you go, And instead, if you just pause, I promise you, people aren't going to think you're crazy. But if you throw enough uhs into a sentence, they might think you're annoying, that you're frustrating. So listen in conversations when people do pause and ask yourself, did I think that was weird? Did they seem like a non-credible speaker? The answer is no. And I just feel like that's probably a better way to train yourself out of the uhs than having somebody ring a bell. The other hack is just to speak slower, because if you're speaking slower, your brain can catch up. And you don't hear many people who speak slowly use One time, my daughter, when she was like 12, it was a phase for her where she was using like so many times. And I mean, forget that I'm a public speaker. I was like, Gabby, we gotta figure this out.
Right.
For 5 minutes, let's try not to say And she goes, okay, can I have one last one? And I go, sure. And she goes, or like, and she goes, oh, that felt so good. I'm like, okay, great. Out of your system? Yeah.
That is so funny.
So that's one. The other is, and it's so, cliche, but it's true, is to think of the person that you're talking to as your best friend. And it helps when that person is very approachable, like you are very approachable. And so I feel very at ease. And I know no matter what I say, you're going to say, that's great, or edit it out if needed. And that puts me at ease. But if you are able to think of this as less of a recording and more of a conversation, you will find yourself much more at ease. Also, where you are. You're setting this up in an environment that's known to you, I think. If you're renting a studio, that's awesome. But I'm also confident that you are familiar with the room. And that is so different than being in a television studio that you've never been before. I know the QVC studio is backwards and forwards, but if I go to another studio, it totally throws me off because I don't know where all the monitors are and everything. So get yourself as comfortable with the environment as you can before you go in there, so that you're also not battling the dysphoria of not knowing where you are anymore. Yeah.
Right.
And it also helps if you want to splurge on getting your hair and makeup done, because nothing makes you feel more confident than being did up. And it really is true that practice makes perfect. The other thing is, I can assure you, I can promise you, you come off, you sound, you appear better than you do. I don't know how many times you need to hear that before it gets into your head, because have you ever had this happen, Haley, where Like you're in a funk. You don't like the way you look, and you go back and you look at pictures of yourself from 5 years ago, and you're like, "Damn, I look great. Like, what was my problem?" Right? And
Yes, 100%.
hey, nothing about you changed. You looked great back then. You look great now. And when you see
Yeah.
pictures of yourself from 2025 and it's 2030, you're going to be like, "Damn it, I looked great then too." Right? So if it's an appearance thing, I promise you look better. If it's you don't like the sound of your voice, well, guess what? That's how your voice always sounds. You hear it differently in your own head. It's the acoustics, right? And everybody loves the way your sound, the way your voice sounds. And I know for a fact, if nothing else, the words you are speaking, the topic you are presenting, the knowledge you are sharing is more important than any of the other garbage that you think is important, like how you look, how many times you're saying, and I know that when you are on your deathbed, you will not regret that you didn't do your makeup that day, but you will regret that you didn't share that amazing idea that you had that would have helped the world.
Jen, that's so good. That's so good. How often did you review, like when you were on TV, did you review the recordings?
The tape reviews. Yeah, when you're first
Yeah.
starting out, they make you do it like once a month.
Oh my God, I would pass away. Pass
And then
away.
sometimes, oh wait, I got another funny story. Sometimes they'll do, I don't know if they do this anymore, but they'll do a review that just about your clothing, like your fashion. And, you know, like we're just going to do a style because you have a stylist that you
Okay.
work with, right? So it's not all on you. But yeah, if you think like picking yourself apart in the mirror is tough enough, imagine like fashion stylists going, well, I don't know if that's your color. And you're like, so
That's so funny.
just be glad you don't have to go through that. And they do it again. It's all to help you look and feel your best. But like at the same time,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh God, you know,
You're like, all right, let's get into this. Like, if we have
terrifying.
to.
It was terrifying. Okay, yeah, I would rather be in front of national television cameras than sitting with three people telling me how I look in my clothing.
That is hilarious.
It's amazing and hilarious at the same time. What makes us scared, and
Totally.
and every person's different. Isn't that wild?
Yeah. It is really wild. It really is. So I have a few rapid fire questions that I'm excited to get in with you. So I'm curious, do you remember the first podcast that you listened to? Or the first one that kind of like you remember having an impact
Yes,
on you?
although I'm not 100% sure it qualifies as it's got to qualify. Yeah, it was a comedy podcast. It was the Ricky Gervais show.
Okay.
So, but this goes back, this was like, I mean, I'm sure people knew who Ricky Gervais was back then, but it was him, it was Stephen Merchant, and the actor who did An Idiot Goes Abroad. I can't remember his name. Anyway, the three of them, these guys did a BBC podcast, and I think they did like 2 seasons. I used to listen to it when I would go like on power walks outside because it would keep me going because I didn't want it to stop. But they were so hysterical that there would be times I had to stop walking and just put my hands on my knees. I was laughing so hard. Like if you can find
Imagine
it,
seeing that from the outside. That's hilarious.
ma'am, are you okay? Yeah. Do you need some water? Yeah. No. So if you can find it, the Ricky Gervais show, and yes, of course, a lot of it is inappropriate and mildly offensive to some, but it was hysterical.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Do you listen to podcasts still? Do you have any that you recommend?
I'm a terrible person because I don't listen to many.
It's okay. That's okay.
I'm more of a I'm not doing your business any good here, but I love a good audiobook. So and honestly, if I'm gonna like dig myself out of this hole, it's because I'm always trying to learn more about this topic, right? And so that I can, I'll listen to some of the more like frankly boring books about the law of attraction and the science behind it so that I can kind of go, okay, I think what you're saying is this, so that I can speak to it in the podcast in a more digestible level. So
that's okay.
Definitely on my to-do list though.
It's okay. I love an audiobook too. No shame in that. I was training for a marathon and I was trying to listen to podcasts, but it just like I would listen to some if they were long enough, but if I had to like switch it while I was running, it just was not going to be for me. So especially on my longer runs, like long runs, I would just pop on an audiobook and just listen there. So I'm right there with you. Like there's a time and a place for both, and that's why they both exist, right?
I did a long road trip once where I listened to Susie Orman. And I must have listened to like 10 episodes. And by the time I got to where I was going, I'm like, okay, I got to rewrite my will. I have to invest in these stocks. I have to, I'm like, I had this whole, and did I do all that? Of course not. But by the end of it, I was like, I'm an independent financial woman. it'll change your mindset. It's just putting
Yeah.
it into action.
Yeah. What's a manifestation book you recommend reading?
So well, not everybody, most people are familiar with The Secret, and that's
Right.
great. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend. But what I enjoy even more than The Secret is the second book that Rhonda Byrne wrote, which is called The Power.
Mm.
And you don't need to have read The Secret in order to read The Power, but it really does get at the heart of the unlocks for law of attraction that The Secret didn't dig into, because The Secret was very, law of attraction 101.
Yeah.
So if you want to dig a little deeper, The Power is a good one. And then Dr. Wayne Dyer's The Power of Intention is a total game changer.
Okay. I'll put those in the show notes for sure. I have two more questions for you. What is a piece of advice you'd love to leave podcasters with today?
Ooh. I'm sure it's been said a million times, but it really is keep showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of this actually in the context of when, was it 15 years ago now, I started my own health journey. I was in a much different place health-wise, dietary, weight, energy levels. And I realized that this was one of those things that even when you hate the idea of it, or the last thing you want to do is, unless you're sick, you keep showing up and you keep doing that workout, drinking the water, trying to make healthier choices. And that over time has resulted in like my health today that I would never, ever go back and change. Right. And there are absolutely times, I'm sure for you too, Haley, or anybody listening, where you're like, this is kind of the last thing I want to do today. I'm not feeling myself, or I don't feel like an inspirational person. I don't feel like the smartest person in this subject. And you know what? You might not be. But when you keep showing up, for me anyway, every time I would kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this, and I would record, by the end of it, I was like, I'm so glad I did. Just like when you finish a workout and you go, I'm so glad I did. Right. And then anytime after those podcasts would come out, somebody would write to me, or, connect for a coaching session, or say, I was having a bad day and that really helped me. I was like, well, if I hadn't shown up, that wouldn't have happened for her. This isn't just about me. It's not just about me feeling like it and doing it and feeling better afterwards. If that were the case, I could just know the things that I know and go about my business. Why are we podcasting to begin with? It's because we want to share what we know and help people be better at being human in whatever, aspect it is that you are an expert in. So cliched, simple, but true. Just keep showing up.
I love that. Do you know who Layla Hermosi is?
No.
She is married to Alex Hermosi, and they have like this big business where they help businesses get over $1 million and beyond, right? And her thing that she always says, that I've started saying to myself, is fuck your mood, follow the plan. Like, that's just what I need to like keep thinking sometimes. I feel like what you said was a gentle version of that.
Yes. Who was the trainer who did The Biggest Loser, which in retrospect, that show has not aged well at all. And it was such a horrible idea. But she was one of the trainers, and she would say, unless you throw up, pass out, or die, keep moving. And like, I don't know if that's the best advice for working out, but I'm like, when you know that you can, when you know that you should, and when you know that, like, yeah, you don't feel like it that day, but is that really the best reason? Like, rest is always important, right? And you've got to know when it's time to take a day off. I'm never going to say no to that. But if you're just, I don't know if I want to do, keep showing up. Anything that has ever been, I don't stop showing up being a wife. I don't stop showing up being a mom. I don't stop showing up in my job, right? The things that matter. And this matters. And I know that sometimes you're going to look at like how much downloads or where it ranks or whatever. And we all get, I don't have a sponsor. Like, I understand that all of that is important, kinda, but the bigger reason that you're doing this, I don't think you're doing this podcast because you think it's going to make you $1 million overnight. I don't think you're doing it because you think you'll lose your job if you don't do it. This is something you are purely doing from passion. And passion is gold. Passion is the thing. Now I'm going to start doing a podcast here, but like, passion is what will take you from I don't have it to I have it. It is critical. It's important. You can't do it without it.
Yeah.
And that passion is in there. It doesn't feel like it's dialed up that day, and that's okay. But trust me, it is there. Keep showing up.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Jen, my last question for you, which I kind of hinted to earlier, is
Yeah.
what is the most surprising thing that podcasting has taught you about yourself?
I learned that you could be, again, anybody who's doing a podcast is a kind of expert about something, right? Or they want to talk to the experts in something. And what I learned just in my own, I mean, I'm hosting this by myself. As I'm talking about this topic, my brain is noting things that I want to go back and learn more about. Like, you can be your own teacher, you can be your own motivator. And there would be times where I would finish the podcast and I would like write down, find more books on blah, blah, blah. And in that way, it was helping me be my own personal trainer when it comes to this topic. And like, it was creating this independent rabbit hole that I was making, helping me and encouraging me to keep learning. And I thought, what a beautiful thing that you can start this chain reaction in yourself just by, because we think thoughts all the time, but when we say them out loud, your brain's working in a different way. It works for manifestation that way too. If you have a dream, say it out loud, that will impact it. But the more I'm talking about this topic, the more my brain is going, oh yeah, but we don't know this yet, and we don't know that yet. And so what I learned is that I'm a far more eager student than I thought I was. And just talking about this subject has made me a better student of it. So you think you're doing it maybe initially because you're teaching, and you are. But I think you'll find as you're podcasting, it makes you a better student too.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to put all your links in the show notes to your social media and the podcast, but I just love anytime we talk, and your podcast, like, I've learned so much from it. I know I'm like editing it and like, listening, but like, I am learning so much from you. It is just so fun. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Makes me want to keep going, Haley. You're always a delight to chat with.
Thank you so much for joining me in the Podcast Cafe. I hope you're leaving with fresh ideas and inspiration to take your podcast to the next level. Remember, podcasting is a journey, and you don't have to do it alone. I'm here to help you every step of the way. Let's connect. Be sure you follow me on Instagram at Espresso Podcast Production, or visit espressopodcastproduction.com for more tips, resources, and behind-the-scenes insights. I'd love to hear about your podcasting journey. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling extra generous, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more podcasters just like you find the show. Until next time, grab your coffee, keep creating, and I'll see you back here in the Podcast Cafe.